We got Justin Mayers, former brother of the week. Hey, there he is.
There he is.
What's up, guys?
The stepbrother.
Welcome to the stream. Profiled in Forbes
on Sunday. Cover story. Big.
Huge.
That was a nice little victory lap.
Yeah. Arguably,
took
this
8
is
years.
a big
Yeah,
appearance,
we got there.
but yeah. It's kind of a stepping stone. You do the Forbes cover, and then you get invited on your friend's podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's great to finally have you here.
They said what turned me on to it was they saw I was brother of the week, and they were looking for feature stories.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. It's
great.
the pipeline.
The pipeline.
It's great to have you finally. We got to see you yesterday in SF. Did you have a good trip?
Yeah, it was great. It's cool being back in SF. The city is like it's alive again, it feels like. And so good energy here. Saw some guys at Equinox working on jeans. It's just good energy everywhere.
That was me, by the way. I didn't bring shorts yesterday. I'm in Equinox and SF being like, somebody from that listens to the show is going to see this
that wasn't as bad as on Monday. I got back from Tahoe and I worked out in my mountain boots.
Yeah. It's just about getting the work in.
Do the work.
What's the scene like? And you've famously been posted up in Austin for a long time. What's the scene like there? Do you think that the startup community in Austin still has a lot of momentum, or that now that SF is, feeling back, does that, potentially slow down Austin's traction?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that it'll, have an impact on Austin's traction. But the reality is, I think that like in SF, if you're building an AI company and you're not in SF right now, it just seems like a bad idea. Like you should just move to the place where all the AI stuff is happening. Outside of that, though, I mean, I think that you could make a pretty compelling argument that Austin is a way better place to build a health company, a defense tech company, like any number of these sort of hard tech or other companies that, the Bay doesn't necessarily have such a stranglehold on. I think Austin is still going to do quite well. And I still personally see a bunch of people moving there. But again, if you're doing AI stuff, it just like SF is like so far and ahead. It's the obvious choice.
I want to ask you about how you're using AI across the different businesses. You obviously have built a bone broth empire, now are in the fintech space that also ties into MAHA. But before we do that, do you have any updates to share on TrueMed? What's the latest?
Yeah, I mean, the big news is that we actually closed a round led by Andreessen Horowitz.
Go!
Congratulations.
You heard it here first. Thank you.
There we go.
So we raised $36 million led by Andreessen Horowitz.
Wow.
And
huge. Congrats.
Big number.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Can you break down how the business is working now? Just give the general pitch for those who might not know what TrueMed does.
Yeah, so basically what we're doing is we're unlocking the ability to spend tax-free HSA, FSA money on things like gym memberships, supplements, 8 Sleeps, sponsor plug.
Let's go.
And,
Let's go. Rora's, right? I think.
Exactly. And all these different things. And like the reason for this is basically the IRS says that health savings accounts and FSA accounts, they're used for medical spend. And yet medical spend is not defined as like, it has to be a pill that is created by a pharmaceutical company. Mm-hmm. If you look at studies, they show that exercise, sleep, supplements, all these things actually work better for treating many chronic conditions than, SSRIs or any such sort of other like pharmaceutical intervention. And so what we're doing is we're basically building an integrated fintech product that allows you, if you're trying to treat or prevent obesity, to buy something like a Peloton, pay for a gym membership using your tax-free HSA, FSA funds, assuming you qualify.
Is the business entirely e-commerce driven, or can you plug into, Peloton eventually gets a retail store and you're kind of like on the Toast layer, like the Square checkout layer as well?
Does like an Apple Pay integration?
Right now we're 100% e-commerce.
Sure.
But a big reason that we raised is to try and like be everywhere, basically. Like
makes sense.
Anytime you're investing in something that could improve, prevent disease, improve your health, anything like that, TrueMed should be a payment option. And so that's kind of where we're going towards.
That's super exciting.
If
it feels like you were if you could sort of rewind and build the best possible business for the MAHA movement that would sort of benefit from this sort of new emphasis on American health, it would have been TrueMed. But talk about the early days of TrueMed. You'd obviously been a successful, entrepreneur at that time. But was there pushback? Did people ever say, oh, this like, yeah, we don't invest in like Shopify apps? Like, was there any of that sort of like, did you get any passes like that you can remember? Because you're obviously here now. You've raised this new round's $36 million from, a huge growth fund. But talk about the early days and the pushback there.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely got pushback. Like when we were starting, people were like, "Is this legal? What are you doing? You're a broth guy. Like, what do you know about about fintech?" And so there was some pushback on that dimension, but for the most part, like if you believe, like we do, that root cause interventions, sleep, exercise, things like this, are actually effective at treating or preventing chronic conditions, which the research certainly shows,
Yeah.
then there's no reason. And in fact, like these sorts of things should be encouraged. Like we should be encouraging more Americans to spend, their tax advantage money on these sorts of things. And the biggest pushback truly was that question of like, is this legal? And some people were like, I don't really believe that exercise is effective as an intervention. And like, if you believe
they're on
that,
Ozempic,
then, like,
they're on
fine.
Ozempic now.
Yeah, it's rough.
How competitive are you and Nick? You obviously started, your broth empire together. Now Nick is running another company, Light Labs, that's crushing it. I'm happy to be an investor there. But do you guys have any sort of running bets on who, is TrueMed or Light Labs going to be the bigger outcome? Is that on your mind?
Nick is as well.
Yeah. So and maybe introduce your brother briefly.
Yeah, so I started Kettle and Fire with Nick Mayers, my brother, and he was 19. I was 25 when we first started the company. He was in one of the early Teal Fellowship classes, actually,
Oh, no way.
which was kind of cool. And so he left Kettle and Fire. I started TrueMed. He's starting Light Labs, which is doing a bunch of consumer testing for brands to test like, Jordy, you care about this, John. I don't think you do, but like, do you have microplastics? Do you have glyphosate? Do you have any of these things for people that are sort of weak-willed and end up getting sick from the environmental toxins in their environment?
Yeah.
So he started that company, and it's been great. Like we've had a great relationship when we were building Kettle and Fire. Like anytime we had conflict, mom could just referee, and I was mostly right, which I think also helped.
Yeah.
But now we're both supporting one another in sort of like this deep thing that we learned and felt and believe earnestly from our Kettle and Fire experience, which is the American food system is basically poisonous to weak-willed people like most Americans. And so, he's working on that way. I'm trying to work on it in the TrueMed way.
That's
I
great.
love that you're both trying to sort of tackle like a very similar problem, but from totally, different angles. And it's great because John doesn't care about what's in his food. He's a junkyard dog. He's,
I'm building up poison resist.
Yeah, exactly.
I consume so many poisons.
But you should be
down.
using TrueMed.
I should. Well, I mean, if I go into pro bodybuilding, I assume I could use TrueMed to, use my FSA, HSA dollars to get tax-free bodybuilding coaching. That's what I want.
100%.
Yes.
Hormones.
I will be a natural bodybuilder.
Talk about something that maybe has
tan.
gotten less attention is just your investing career. Maybe like kind of how do you kind of what were a few of your early angel investments that kind of got you hooked on it? Because I feel like you're deeply addicted to angel investing, which has turned out to be a really good habit for you. But and we bonded over this early on because when we first met, I think it was for Rora, which you ended up investing in, and you were like, I wanted to start this company, but like I guess I'll invest. But yeah, maybe talk a little bit about that and kind of like what's most interesting to you at this point.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, if you look at my balance sheet, definitely angel investing has been great. If you look at the income statement, it's basically been like the worst hobby that an American man has ever had, just like dumping cash into different illiquid, vehicles for 7 years now.
Yeah.
But my first ever angel check actually was into something called Crusoe Energy, which is a founders fund company.
I didn't even know
that's
that.
Such a banger company too. Worth billions now.
Yeah, so that's a good one. My second one was in a company called Mind Bloom, which is like doing at-home ketamine therapy.
Yeah.
I'm very much a believer in psychedelic therapy generally. And just as I did more and more of these kind of deals, like I felt very strongly that as someone who is building a company, there are like one of the key areas of alpha you have is you just get a really good sense of like who is actually good at doing stuff. And so Jordy, when you were talking about Rora, I was like, okay, this guy is smart. He's good at marketing. He's good at building teams. Like, you introduced me to Brian and the rest of the guys. It's like, this is going to be a great deal and a great company. And I think that something that maybe people don't appreciate enough is if you lived in the Bay, I moved to the Bay in 2012, lived in here. I'm actually in San Francisco right now, lived here for a decade. You just got to meet all of these amazingly talented people that were starting companies. And after I passed on a deal that a friend was starting, and it ended up like totally blowing up. And I was like, okay, this is dumb. I just have all of this alpha that is like surrounding me in San Francisco.
Blowing up in a good way, presumably.
Yeah, blowing up in a good way, exactly.
Yeah. You're like, that company, Theranos. Blew up. I could have been in the book. I could have been in the movie.
Yeah,
there are multiple types of alpha.
No, there's a weird thing where I realize like it's a huge mistake not to invest in your friends.
You're absolute
because,
boys.
If you believe in your own abilities, you tend to sort of self-select to be around other, similarly talented people, and like you should just default invest in your friends.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a lesson that I learned kind of the hard way. And then now I invest probably in 15 companies a year personally as an angel, and I'm also a venture partner at a fund called Long Journey Ventures. So do a lot of it, I would say.
Talk about your approach to valuation. You're not obviously, it's not like the most important factor by any means, but every time, it's so often I feel like I talk to you and you're like, oh yeah, I got into that company at like a 3 cap or something like that. And normally most investors are like, I haven't seen a company raising at a 3 cap. But somehow you do it. Is that just by sort of nerding out and meeting founders like sort of years before they end up starting companies? Like, how do you even make that happen?
Yeah, definitely it is by nerding out and like knowing people and talking to them about when they're thinking of taking the leap. Like in the case of Mindbloom, I was talking to my friend Dylan for a while. He was running other ideas by me. And at one point I was just like, dude, you're the most into psychedelic therapy person I know. If you start a psychedelic therapy company, like do it, I'll write the first check and just like get going. And I've done that with a couple other companies where they're deciding, do I take the leap or not? And I, as a friend and as a backer, can just be like, you should definitely do this. I'll help you put together the rest of the money, and I'll literally be the first check in. Not that it's like crazy size, like we're not ringing the size gong or anything, but
we'll hit the size gong for you.
But yeah, so that I think is, if you can play some role in the journey that your friends have or like other people have in going from should I start a thing to I'm doing this thing, oftentimes you have pricing advantage in that, but you're also like part of the journey and part of the story and one of the first believers, which is, I think personally, the thing that is most exciting to me about angel stuff. Like I don't get hot and bothered about, a late stage growth round for a company that's crushing it quite as much as I do like the one-on-one, very personal conversations with someone that wants to do something big and is like trying to figure out how to take that first leap.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, that makes sense. How are you seeing AI impact, obviously the broth business, Kettle and Fire, the broth empire? It's very, real world driven. Like you guys are figuring out, like from what I can see, there you can't make enough of the product, right? Like there's sort of like demand is sort of you have like the best problem for a business owner, and sort of you're trying to like meet that demand. Are you seeing sort of more efficiency though in the sort of like, across the company broadly? Are there sort of hires that you would have made this year that maybe you're not having to because of AI, or obviously you're on the board now, but I'm sure you still have enough visibility into the business.
Oh yeah. I mean, for Kettle and Fire specifically, we are not hiring like ad creators. We're not hiring copywriter. Like there was this whole slew of marketing adjacent people that we previously, had to hire. We had a copywriter for the first like 5.5 years of the company. Now we don't have anyone. We used to have designers like full time. Now we're investing less in that area. So there's a lot of areas in the marketing side of things that we have just invested less in. The thing that I'm most excited about is, I think if you're running a tech company like TrueMed, we have to. It's existential for us to figure out how to use AI, because every tech company is going to use AI because it's just like in the bloodstream of the tech industry. If Kettle and Fire can figure out, as a bone broth company, how to learn and apply AI, we're going to be like the best run CPG company in the entire country and the most efficient one. And so we have like a whole team, and by whole team, I mean 2 people internally focused at Kettle and Fire that are like playing with AI, using it to build tools. We're doing something kind of interesting where we are building a factory. It's like a massive 150,000 square foot bone broth, bone broth kind of
Broth
spots.
Empire.
Yeah. I need a cool moniker for that. I'm not in the content.
Arsenal 2.
Yeah.
Broth Arsenal. Self-replicating broth.
The strategic broth reserve.
I mean, speaking of strategic reserves, should we move on to MAHA?
I think this could be the start. I hope that this is the start of decades of investment and attention around American health.
Yeah.
Everybody's experienced this. You can have everything you ever wanted in life, but if you're not healthy, you in many ways have nothing. If you were, starting a company, what opportunities do you see today for sort of new entrepreneurs to sort of, there's the obvious beneficiaries of people are like, oh, I want to be healthier, I'm going to have bone broth, or, oh, I want to spend my HSA funds more effectively, I can, use TrueMed. But what other opportunities are you kind of seeing for sort of net new entrants into the space?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest companies get built to solve the biggest problems. And in this case, like what I call the Great American Poisoning, America's chronic disease crisis, is the biggest problem in the country. Like healthcare, $4.5 trillion a year in spend, 90% of that goes towards chronic conditions. Mm-hmm. People are generally becoming skeptical of health insurance. Their doctors are not spending much time with them. Doctors broadly don't think about or know how to treat chronic conditions. Like most people will go to their doctor, say, I'm dealing with obesity. Your doctor's not allowed to ask you if you're actually like fat or over anything like this, which is insane. And then if that
is it
happens,
not like a clinical definition?
No, I mean, doctors are being discouraged from asking this because
just culturally.
Yeah, exactly. It like turns patients off and like is shame of some sort. And our existing medical system, when someone walks in and says, hey, I want to lose weight or I'm dealing with inflammation or whatever, predominantly they get recommended drugs, they get recommended prescriptions, they get recommended all this stuff. And I think that people are starting to like wake up and be skeptical of the system that basically where people get sick because of our toxic environment and then our healthcare system drugs them for profit. And so I think that if you are an entrepreneur or someone that cares about this problem, there are effectively infinite things that you can do to try and like build a business in this space. I think people are going to become much more skeptical of pharmaceuticals over the next decade. I think people are, the doctor-patient relationship is going to be totally reinvented. You see companies like Function and Superpower and others that are starting where they have the philosophy that health is not found in the doctor's office, which I agree. Like if you get your labs done outside of that, you change your diet, you start exercising, you start taking supplements, your outcomes are much more likely to improve than they are if you just like go talk to your GP once every 9 to 12 months and spend on average 7 minutes with that doctor a year. And so I just think that every aspect of the patient journey, how people are getting sick, what they're doing to address it is completely changing right now, which is really exciting.
Great answer.
Yeah, you got to get people on sleep diet and exercise. That's like it's the most boring content, but every new health influencer that blows up, they always blow up like, let's just go back to the basics. And they just drill that for a year. They get really big. And then they start to talk about like, oh, the longer tail stuff.
Butthole sunning.
Bored. Yeah, exactly. Do you have any life hacks or tips for sleep diet or exercise that you like to share or ways to get advances there?
People are going to ask about the skin and hair routine too.
For sure.
Yeah, I think that people, a big thing that people need to pay attention to is toxin avoidance. Like I very much am of the belief that we exist in the biggest toxic soup that any group of humans have ever lived in. Like the US, our approach to regulating chemicals is so bad and so different from that of Europe. Like our third most popular pesticide is called atrazine. Just to give an example, it's banned in the EU, banned in Mexico, banned in Canada, third most popular pesticide in the US. And provably, when you expose male frogs to atrazine, like 4 out of 10 of them become female frogs to the point where they can bear offspring.
Yeah,
like this is Alex Jones.
It's the Alex Jones thing that was actually proven like maybe
that was actually right. Yeah. Alex Jones crushed this one.
And it didn't come from Alex Jones. It came from some Berkeley professor, right? Who wrote it. And then I believe Michael Crichton, when he wrote Jurassic Park, was basing it on that research. And so in the original Jurassic Park movie, there's the whole story about, the dinosaurs, if they're under environmental pressure, they can change sexes to continue to reproduce. This is like the plot of the first Jurassic Park. And it was seen as like sci-fi, but Michael Crichton had actually read the paper and said like, oh, this is like possible. I'll include this in my book, which got turned into a movie. Is very, very interesting. And then it became like a conspiracy theory. And then it became like real again. It was very weird how he round tripped it in the media from like, totally reasonable to unbelievable to believable again. Fascinating.
That's amazing.
Where do you go? Out of curiosity, what are your sources of? I was about to ask, what are your sources of alpha? But and so you don't need to actually share those. But X like doesn't respect links anymore, right? You post a link, so nobody posts links. There's some good original thought on X, but a lot of it's sort of just like mimetic, people just like iterating around the same ideas.
Slop.
We I think bonded over kind of like the Ray Pete forums and sort of that like sort of whole hub of
arcane
knowledge around health. Where are you going on the internet aside from places like X to get insight around kind of where health is going, where kind of consumer trends are going, if anywhere?
Yeah, I really think that Elon is correct in recognizing that Substack is kind of one of the threats maybe to X. It's a different platform, but that's where I get a lot of my news. And the things that I find most interesting that the health community is talking about are things like toxin avoidance. I think environmental toxins are going to be the biggest trend of the next decade. And we just don't even understand or begin to understand how bad a lot of these things are. I think that the peating stuff, Jordy, is like totally spot on. I think that people thinking about metabolic rate and all these sorts of things is highly undervalued and underappreciated today. And then another thing I think is we're going to see much more, and I read Substacks on this, but I think there's going to be much more attention paid to nutrient deficiencies. Like, the average American's food is something like between 40 and 70% less nutrient dense than it was even just 50 years ago. That's something that's not baked into almost anyone's model of the world when they think about health and wellness is,
so I should get triple steak at Chipotle?
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. I totally agree with you. It's a scary one because it's almost like we need to genetically engineer the food to having
the nutrients. We gotta add them back
into it.
We took them out and then we add them back.
It's one of those scary
cycle
things.
Continues.
I have an orange juice right here, and I know it has like probably 75% less, even vitamin C than it would have 50 years ago, and that's sort of scary. Do you think that the solution is to sort of genetically engineer our food back to sort of to the past, or are you still sort of pro naturalist?
Yeah, I would say on this one I'm mostly a naturalist, largely because a lot of the nutrient decay, some of it comes from soil, a lot of it comes from how we transport our food. Like if you grow spinach in California, package it, put it on average like a 12-day kind of like supply, put it through the supply chain, it gets to where you're eating it 12 days later. But in that 12-day period, that spinach is going to lose like roughly 70-90% of its total nutrient density content. And so I just think people like ideally should be eating more seasonally, more locally, and then eating animal products, which frankly like tend to be much more nutrient dense than plants and vegetables.
I have a hot take on this I want to run by you. I'm calling it the efficient markets diet. And it's basically like you can collapse all of the health and advice that you just gave me, which I believe, and I think you're onto something, into just the market is efficient. And therefore, if I want to have the least toxic, most nutrient dense foods, I should just buy the most expensive thing. And I should shop at Erewhon and buy the most expensive thing. And I always ask the question of when I hear about a new diet, new trend, is this just a transposition of buy the most expensive thing? What do you think?
I think that's spot on. And this is why things like keto didn't have necessarily the staying power, where people were like, oh, that means I can buy dog shit cheese and dip it in butter and just like max out on fat content and not eat anything healthy. Which is clearly just like not how you should do keto.
A lot of these diets, I feel like the main value is just giving you a little heuristic that sticks in your brain that's very easy. Like paleo, I don't know how good of the diet that is, but all I know is that if you're on paleo, caveman didn't have McDonald's. Don't eat McDonald's. And if you just stop eating McDonald's, that's going to be an improvement for a lot of people, right? And I think that
except for Trump,
it would take away all of his power, probably. Yes, and he would immediately.
Yeah, but I think
lose
so.
The
I
election.
think the greatest. So if that's true, and we're just sort of playing this out, then the challenge for the technology industry is to try to deliver like what is now extremely expensive, but make it 10 times cheaper.
Yeah.
And so like maybe that's probably an entire problem area.
And the flip side of the efficient market diet is that as food gets really, really cheap because you're just completely optimizing everything and everything is just completely, mechanized, it gets so cheap that people can overeat. And then I don't know where you stand on the calorie in, calorie out thing, but I think that it like people can overeat if the food's really expensive, and they'd probably be better off eating less food that's more pure. But what's your response to that?
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, for sure, people. That said, though, the body has natural kind of satiety, mechanisms that kick in, and they kick in and work better more when you're eating real food.
Totally.
Like if people, it's almost impossible to sit down and slam 3 ribeyes, but it's
I'll stop you right there. I think I could do it pretty easily. But for most people, yes, I
junkyard dog. Yeah. But I mean, for many people, they've had the experience or seen someone have the experience of just eating through an entire fucking bag of Doritos or something like that.
Totally. And they're designed to get you to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the more you're eating real food, the more your like body's natural mechanisms of, hey, you're full, hey, you should stop eating, hey, you're gonna feel sick if you keep doing this, kicks in a way that it just doesn't when you're eating like the Costco 48 ounce bag of cheese balls or something.
I would love to see you eat something like that.
It would just kill you instantly. I keep joking with Jordy that I'm on the junkyard diet, he's on the poodle diet, and a single inorganic blueberry would kill him instantly.
Yeah, I gotta
because
be careful.
he has no poison resist built up.
Gotta be careful.
Yeah, it's a balancing act, clearly.
Justin, thank you for coming on. You're our new health. You are the expert now. So whenever we're talking about how we're going to need to consult with the experts on this,
we say trust the science, trust the bro scientists, trust
the brother scientist, Justin Mares.
Justin is our correspondent.
Congratulations on the round.
Congratulations,
it's fantastic. Job's not finished, obviously.
One last size gong.
We're going to get every single American, running on TrueMed, and then I hope we can get it so that you can basically spend your entire income through TrueMed someday, because it's probably the most important thing that you spend money on.
Just no taxes then.
Yeah.
just pay zero taxes.
That'd be fun.
This is the true tax optimizer. Just spend 100% of your income on healthy
steak and
food
blueberries
and gym, which is really all you need to spend money on. So I think it's a great tax optimization strategy. I want to be paying zero in taxes because I'm just eating at Erewhon and
giving Justin and the TrueMed team their cut.
Yeah, they're cut. They're cut. Yeah, for sure. They are the new tax. You pay the tax to TrueMed. You don't pay the tax to the government. We're privatizing taxes.
But I'm serious. Anytime there's big health headlines, we want to have you come back on and break it down with us.
This is fantastic. Thanks so much for joining.
We'll see you in the group chat.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
We'll see you. Have a good one.